Over the past few years, a large number of companies, both domestic and international, have leased significant space to build and operate co-working centers across multiple cities. Even as these developer projects are designed to cater to the corporate clients, there are pre-existing outlier concerns which continue to dominate the security psyche. These outlier concerns include the increasing prices of the properties, the costs associated with security augmentation, the existing crime and security risks which a client is likely to encounter in the area of operation, and landscape and natural disaster mitigation concerns. To highlight these issues and also review the existing market risks which the corporate clients and the developer are likely to encounter forms the gist of this episode.
Hello and welcome to another episode of IIRIS Report. And in this episode, we are looking at the real estate sector and the challenges that India faces, particularly in the light of the fact that the government of India has decided to bring in a lot of sectoral reforms, at the same time also brought in greater accountability and transparency. But there are certain challenges and certain concerns of both the investor as well as the users remain, such as the increasing prices of properties, the security and the need for augmentation of security wherever it exists, and most importantly, the natural disaster mitigation control systems and the existing market risks. And we have two experts with us who have a fair amount of understanding of the real estate sector. We have with us Mr. Sumit Anand, who is the Global Infrastructure and Logistics Leader for Genpact, and I believe you have come into Genpact with a vast amount of experience in other corporate bodies, so I'm sure that will work towards our advantage. And we have Mr. Alok Agarwal, who is the Managing Director of Brookfield Properties and the CEO of the India business. So Mr. Agarwal will look at it both from an Indian and an international perspective. So Sumit, let me ask you, what are the key avenues of risks which the building or corporate occupiers are concerned with in the real estate sector? Because there are a number of risks, we all know that. I'd rather have it from you.
So, as a corporate user, I look at it from two different aspects to it. One, when I'm in an existing building, and the issues which I face in an existing building when I'm there for a long-term period. The moment a building gets old, the infrastructure gets old, the landlord or the owner's intent of spending on the property diminishes. He looks at his books and he says, hey, why should I spend over there? For me, as the years goes by, my operations is getting bigger and bigger, and I'm more focused about giving wellness and different kind of features to the user over there. If I look at it from a perspective of going to a new building, and if I'm acquiring a new building, I'm leasing a new building, or I'm consolidating, and that's what is happening in today's world. A lot of people are consolidating from one location to another. A lot of times what you see is that you actually deal with a developer, and then you realize that developer, once the building is done and you are occupying it, he sells it to an investor. The moment a new investor comes, he looks at it as a new investment, and he wants to milk the cow again. So then the challenge of a user continues over there. Hey, how do I get the best out of a property?
So both ways, the user is facing challenges every few years, apart from the challenge of doing well in the business that his core business area that he's in, which is really going to help him pay the bills. But Alok, do you agree with all that? Because your company, I'm told, also manages huge amount of real estate in cities like London. So where do you really see the problem coming up in India? India has got a few of these corporate hubs, but are they really ideal in terms of what you would look at it as a foreign investor?
So, valid point raised by Sumit. I would like to touch on some of the operational issues, operational risks, which are very, very important for occupier to look at whenever he is taking a space. So, I think it's very important that building should be safe. It should be structurally safe. In case of earthquake, it should survive. It should not the business continuity should continue. So, that's an important aspect. Then we hear a lot about fire, fire safety. We hear a lot actually, and there are many cases where people have lost their lives because people were not able to control fire, or they cannot evacuate fire. During the fire, people could not be evacuated. So that's again an important issue which occupiers need to look at. Other very important issue is nowadays most of the IT companies, they work 24/7. So 24 hours working is there. So employees should be safe, especially when people are leaving their office at late evening, late night. So employees should be safe. That's an important aspect. Third thing is natural calamities. 2 years back, what happened in Chennai, there was a huge flood, and some of the offices had to stop their functioning for 3 days, 4 days. It doesn't work in a global environment today. So if
But the United States also has major natural calamities when large parts of states get, Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane this and Hurricane that. I mean, they are natural emergencies at
Fair point.
So, I mean, you can't fight nature, can you?
Fair point. The only point what we are saying is that in face of a natural calamities, you should be up and running in a shortest possible time.
Okay. So, going back to you, Sumit, I mean, that's a very important point that has been raised. But equally, I mean, of concern to me is, how does the sector in India really ensure that the employees are safe when outside your office there are a whole lot of hazards that an employee faces, from bad traffic to weather or other sort of, there may be political turmoil, and suddenly your employees again, which work in the real estate sector today, could be yesterday having, for you, been working in the banking sector or some other sector. So there is that safety of the employee, which to me is equally important. You can't just be motivated by return on investments.
So he actually hit the nail on the head. I was actually going to continue in the same flow over there, what he spoke, and you actually led us to that particular question. The moment you look at moving out, you look at reducing your cost. And when you are looking at reducing your cost, you're also very, very worried about the factor of safety of your employees on a daily basis. What is happening over time is people are actually cutting their cost by moving a little further down. Every time, because that area has become expensive, you are actually looking at opportunities which are a little further down, which cut down your cost. But every time you're doing that, maybe in a daytime you are able to avoid the risk because you're well within the complex, and the daytime you still have infrastructure around. The moment nighttime happens, and if your functioning is in the nighttime, you are bound to have experiences where there are some kind of experiences, and you read in newspapers in Gurgaon almost every second day that somebody is being mugged on the road. So while your complex is safe, the moment you're out, the challenges of those kinds, really sometimes you have to think twice if you are actually going to go really far away. So you have to make a real toss and then take a decision that which is the right one.
Okay, Alok, now leads me to another question. How much does that really play into the calculation of investors? Because investors can only be as happy with their investment if it works in a 360-degree all-around benefit to everybody, the investor and the end user. And there is another factor which I can't seem to understand, that while private equity investments in recent years in India seem to be going down, the real estate sector seems to be perhaps the most booming sector for investments, at least within India. So how do you match the international expectations with what is happening in India?
So let me answer the first question first. For an investor, it's not just return of the investment. Of course, that's a paramount, but return of investment will also come in case the complex is safe and secure. People appreciate the investment. People appreciate the work we have done. We are not here just to make money, but we also want to put global standards. We want to, enforce global compliances. And just to give a small example, what we say, the road or the starting of a campus is 2 kilometers before the gate of the campus, and it ends 2 kilometers after the exit gate of the campus. So many times we manage those roads in terms of traffic and security and safety, and that's the work we do. That's part of our job. It's not a favor we are doing to anybody. So that's very important for a private equity investor. In terms of private equity investment going down, so what I would say is, if you compare with 2017 and 2018, 2017 numbers were up. That's because in 2017, 2 large deals happened. So one was DLF GIC deal, which was a large deal, and one was Brookfield Hirandani deal, which was a large deal, which happened. Otherwise, the interest of private equity investors is still they're very keen. The only thing is maybe deals have not happened, so the numbers have gone down, but the interest is there. And if they are good deals, they are ready with money and they can plow it. Second thing is, what has happened is that number of deals have gone down because valuations have run up. So I think if valuations get juicy, they get attractive, probably more money can flow in. There's no dearth of investors, there's no dearth of money. That's my take on that.
Okay, Sumit, one of the problem areas that any real estate investment would encounter is how to make the real estate attractive to people who stay in that general city but spread all over the place, i.e. the commuting time, how to reduce it. Do you factor that in?
110%, because every time you go to a building, the first thing you look at is what is the public transport available. I can support to a certain extent as an organization, but on a daily basis there are different people coming at different time zones. It's just impossible to support that. And every time an employee comes and spends 2 hours or 3 hours on the road, you are actually wasting productive time as well as his own time. So it is a very key aspect.
Right. So lots of important points here, and in the real estate sector the challenges are there, but it will continue to boom as long as there is a reality check on what kind of prices are being offered to investors. But after break, we will look at, are the regulations enough or are they a bother? Are the approvals extensive or are they essential for the real estate sector to function in an organized way? But that after break. Welcome back. We are looking at the real estate challenges and the risks both to investors and potential users in India, and we continue to have our two experts with us. So Sumit, I would like to ask you that one of the real problem areas that the real estate sector faces is essentially in terms of the number of approvals they require. And they say something like 50 approvals are required before you can get a project through. Now, you as an end user, because I'm going to go to Alok after this to say that are these absurd in terms of the approvals required? But even in the hotel industry, there's the similar problem. I remember doing a show and they said 70 odd approvals are required for every project. So how much of these approvals really benefit you and your employees or corporate employees as end users? Do you think they are well in order for your own interest, or do you think sometimes it can become extremely frustrating for you and your colleagues that offices are just not getting ready in time because the approvals haven't come?
So I would say that as long as, as far as basic approvals of your layouts, your building bylaws, like he mentioned about the quality of building, when you're looking at going into a building as an occupier, I'm always looking at a grade A building, or a worst case, closest to a grade A building, that it has all the features of safety and security met into it. I would think yes, they are required. On the other hand, when I talk to the developers and when I ask them, hey, my project is getting delayed, I have a link to another building which I'm supposed to vacate and I'm supposed to move into your building. If this gets delayed, I'm going to be penalized in the other building automatically. So the fine line between moving from one building to another is sometimes a very chaotic piece and creates a lot of risk, because you are open to a lot of funding issues over there, because you have to pay penalties if you are delayed over there, whereas a developer, while he is trying, he's struggling because he's not got approvals.
And business suffers because the time that's taken. But Alok, I mean, with your experience internationally, are we really too bureaucratic in our approach? Because a couple of things that emerge is about 50 odd approvals are required for any project to go through. Land is not easily available. If it's available, then the central government and the state government are not on the same page in terms of what approvals need to be given and how they need to be given. All that can make your task rather daunting and frustrating. Or is it the same outside of one or two countries everywhere in the world, that you're running in circles trying to get approvals?
No, I think a very valid point. The challenge here is that while the number of approvals required is large actually, but I think right now we will not need those approvals. But what we need to do is to hasten the process of giving those approvals. And what we have seen is, while these approvals are required, but many of the developers who have not followed these approvals, so even when these approvals are required, they have not followed this approval. So it's essential that approvals have to be taken, but what we have to implement is how quickly they can be taken. Globally, yes, the number of approval required is much lower, but the defaults are also much lower. Developers are not short charging or short circuiting the process. So that's one big difference between some of the Indian developers and some of the established developed countries.
Okay. So Sumit, it doesn't seem a very unhappy situation here, though your experience may have been much more challenging than what has been brought out. But there is another factor here which really I can't seem to really understand what is the way out of it, and that is the urban challenge. You know, everyone wants to have their offices at the right place with the right address, but everyone is not able to get a hold on that kind of a property because there's a shortage of land in India. The second thing is that, as yet from what I know, perhaps 3 or 4 cities have really developed corporate hubs. Hyderabad is one, Gurgaon is another one, Pune, I believe, is another one. So what is it that is stopping other cities from developing similar corporate hubs?
So the development, if you the examples which you're making, and it's straight away clicking in my mind as cyber city in Gurgaon, or a high-tech city in Hyderabad, or maybe a Powai in Mumbai, for example. That's the way these developments have happened and are really doing very well. The demand for other cities hasn't happened because your talent is moving from smaller cities to the bigger cities. So when I have to open a new location, I'm also looking at what is the talent pool available. If this availability of a good location or a property is there in a smaller city, I will also tap the industry over there. How many colleges are there? What is the kind of availability of talent pool over there? Those things really matter a lot when you are selecting. That's where the struggle happens. And that's where you see people moving from smaller cities to bigger cities, and the developments happen in these locations.
Okay, Alok, one of your main international presences is in London. Now, even a city as conducive to investment as London, perhaps amongst the highest investments, foreign investments in the world are in London, or amongst the top 3. They've also gone and created this little haven outside of the city of London, which is really the business hub, very much the same size as Cyber Hub in Gurgaon. Now, how do you feel that your own expertise, and what do you look for? Have you made proposals in India to some of the cities where this could be built in their planning? I mean, a lot of people say the difference between greenfield and brownfield projects are that the new ones can certainly take in sensible planning in the initial stages. But where do you feel the challenges lie in India? I mean, with your experience overseas, how does it compare with the rest of the world?
So I think there are 2 or 3 things which are more challenging in India. One thing is the availability of land. If you want to develop a walk to work culture, you need a large piece of land, and that is, how difficult it is to get land in India. We have seen it across India. So that's one big challenge. Second thing is infrastructure. If you want to be away from city, you need a metro connectivity, or you need a fast expressway, which is sometimes available in India, sometimes not available. And unfortunately in India, infrastructure always come after real estate development, whereas it should be other way around. Infrastructure should come first, and then real estate development should come up. So infrastructure and land, these are 2 major challenges which prohibit development of large centers in India.
But I want to take this further. In some cities, correct me if I'm wrong with that example, say BKC and Mumbai, right? There are corporate structures there, and there is some limited amount of residential structures. Why don't you look at the model, say, of some of the Government of India undertakings? The military cantonments are a case in point, where everything is built in comprehensively, from workplace to home to entertainment to everything else. Why is it that only builders are concentrating on building offices and not building adjoining stay places so that you can walk to work?
No, some of the cases have been successful. Let's say Powai is a very successful example, where there are residences, where there are offices, where there is hotels, school, hospital, but then it takes a wherewithal for a developer to do that kind of a development.
And a vision.
And a vision, actually. And other 2 logistic point I kind of pointed out. And also there's a bit of a kind of a mentality that, and cycles work differently. So a residential cycle is doing well, that time office cycle is not doing well. So people are focusing on office, and when office cycle is doing bad, people are focusing on residential. So I think that mismatch also plays a role in kind of a combined development to come up.
and that there is no long-term patience with a lot of people because everyone wants to get rich by tomorrow. But yeah, Sumit, you wanted to make a point.
Just on elaborating on that part, if you look at it, all these places which have actually done well have been in the heart of the city or closer to the heart of the city. The example of Powai is good because it is not very away from Mumbai. There is another example in Mumbai of Pallava. I think loaders have developed something over there. It's taken a hell of a lot of time for development. So while you could think of have a vision and develop something like that, the connectivity to the main people's travel, travel again becomes a huge angle to it. That hey, while that there is sustainability, there is cost reduction over there. If you move over there, but other features are missing with it.
See, one of the questions that also comes up is that developers often turn around and keep raising prices of projects from the time it starts. Now, their counter argument is that unfair practices in the cement industry lead to them having to hike up prices because they can't complete the project in time. Now, what do you feel as a user or an investor that you've made a commitment to the developer, you've paid 25% upfront or 10% or whatever. Then you are stuck with this and you have to get your books right and the prices have begun to go up. So how do you match it?
So, if your vision is clear about your business, how long it is going to last, I think most of the users like to go in for longer leases.
Okay. So, on that point, we need to wrap up the show. Thank you very much for your inputs. And quite clearly, there is a big challenge up there in the real estate industry. And we'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, goodbye.